Welcome to Make It Plain from Make Plain Jesus Ministries, featuring Pastor James Bryan, where we take biblical truths in everyday situations and break them down to be as plain as possible. So, stay tuned and enjoy the broadcast.
Welcome to this edition of Make It Plain. It's our podcast where we are going to share with you some other tangible nuggets that you can use in your everyday life, both in your secular roles that you may have and also in the roles that you have in your church or ministry, whatever you're involved in from that perspective. And these are things that are great for everyday life. And so today I want to talk about this topic, and it's called You Can Do Better, Right? And it's a question that we all, I guess I would say often, I won't say always, I would say often have inside of us. And it's coming from the perspective of someone always looking and seeing someone else in leadership, but then they begin to think, I could do that job much better than what they're doing. Or it's from the perspective of, I don't know what they were thinking. Why would they make that decision? So when we talk about this topic of you can do it better, right? We're going to examine it and look at it from that perspective. And let me just start off by giving you this, I guess, I wouldn't say it's an analogy, but a story. And so I have this habit, and this habit is no matter where I go to different restaurants or stores or organizations, I often have this habit of looking at how they're organized. Whether they're efficient, how many people they have working, what are they doing? And it's a habit that I try to turn off, but I'm not always successful. In fact, I think there was a time when I was on vacation, and I think it was on vacation for about a week and a half, and I was with my wife, and we were in some restaurant, and I was looking at how they were doing things, and of course I'm looking at her and thinking, I said, look at this. They're not doing this. The service is this way. They should be. And she said, will you stop critiquing? We're on vacation. Just stop critiquing for a minute. And I had to turn that off. But it's something that I often see wherever I go. What kind of service are they giving? How timely are they in giving me whatever it is that I'm expecting? And what's the environment like? And I'm always looking at that. Now, I know I'm not the only one. I'm sure that some of you who may listen to this podcast will think the same way at times. And you wonder, why does it take so long? There is a restaurant not far from me that I haven't been to in a while. The food was good, but the service was always at a snail's pace. There was never any desire, I guess, on the part of the organization to speed things up. The quality was good. The service wasn't great. Sometimes the inventory wasn't where it should be. And it would be frustrating. And the only thing that kept me coming back for a time was that I knew that if I was patient enough, I would be able to get what I wanted, and it would be a good experience from that standpoint of eating. But let me examine another place that I go to for a minute. And it's always good to use an example, and there's a reason for this. There's a place that I go to a lot of times to fill up for gas, and it's called Wawa. Many of you have heard that, but if you're listening from outside this region, maybe you haven't. But it's a place where you go and you fill up for gas, you get air for your tires, all that kind of stuff. But inside is the convenience part also. And so they make sandwiches and other types of foods for you, specialty drinks they make for you, and then they have the prepackaged things also there. But you see, I usually, if I see a Wawa somewhere, especially if I'm traveling, I'll stop in there as a preference when I want gas or something else along the way that I need to pick up. But there's a reason for it. And the reason is usually the quality is good of what I get from them. The service is good and usually doesn't take very long. And in fact, there are several in the area in which I live, but one in particular I go to almost always. And even when I was working in a place that was south of where I lived, I would go kind of a little bit north on purpose to where this particular location was, because they would give me an experience that I wanted. You see, for me, when I go, I look at these organizations, these places where I get service, and I look for three things. And these three things are important to me anyway. And maybe your three things might be a little bit different. So I look for quality at every place that I go, but especially in this particular example, I'm looking for quality. I'm looking for speed. How long does it take for me to get what it is that I'm looking for, that I'm paying for? And I'm also looking for friendliness. And so, I want it to be as if, while I'm there, as brief as it may be, I feel like they're at least respecting me and treating me well, that type of thing. This particular location of the Wawa does a great job. I remember there used to be a lady there of German descent, and she spoke English well, but she spoke it with a heavy German accent. And she was close to retirement. But one of the things I noticed, especially when I used to go there early in the morning on my way to work, that as soon as someone would come in, she would say, from the back, she would shout, because that's where the coffee part was. She would shout, "Hi, Mr. Jones," or "Hi, Mr. Smith. Good morning, Mr. Smith." And she would say that to everyone as they came in, because she remembered everybody's name. Once she got your name, she would remember. And so it made it feel like there was a place where people cared about you. And people would come to that location because of her and others like her. Well, she retired, and there was another lady there that was close to retirement. And she worked doing sandwiches and other parts of the establishment. But she would not only remember your name, she would remember what it is that you like to get on a regular basis. And so what she would do is when she would say, "Hi, Mr. Bryan," or "Hi, Mr. Jones," or "Hi, Mr. Smith," or "Mrs. Smith," or whoever else is coming in, she would remember the name and just say, "Oh, we do have what you're looking for is right over there." Or she would say, "We just ran out of what you like, so can you wait 10 minutes or 5 minutes and I'll have another one for you." In other words, it was that personal interaction. That kind of interaction made you feel like they cared enough, and you would go out of your way to come back again. The speed was usually very good because, of course, I have this habit of looking at how they're arranged. And if I order a specialty drink, like some type of coffee drink or latte or something, or if I'm doing a sandwich of some type, I would see how they're moving things along. And usually it's very quick and efficient. And so I see all of that. And then, of course, the quality has been very good. So I kept coming back. And so they were hitting all of those things that I look for every time. So my critique was that it was worth me going out of my way to make sure I got what I wanted in the timeliness that I wanted, right? And they actually recognized my existence when I was there. When we think about these things, there are always drivers that bring people back to your organization. They bring people back to just an encounter with you. And we always have to think about those things. But often, because of the ease of giving comments, many people would critique everything that's being done, even if they don't understand what's behind it. And so when we have this whole topic of, I could do this better, when we sit there and think about, I don't know why they went ahead and made that decision. That made no sense. Or if we sit there and we say, look at that coach. Why would he do that right now? Because that doesn't make any sense. Well, oftentimes we're doing it with only partial knowledge or partial understanding. Here's a case in point. One more analogy or story that I can share with you. I knew about a particular executive, and he was the deputy or the number 2 behind the person who was in charge of this organization in that department. And so this particular executive was one that was very educated And so everything he would do would be theorized, and he was very book smart and everything else. The one who was in charge, had the education, but what he had was experience on top of connections. And the thing about the one in charge was he had a very abrasive attitude. But he got so much done and he had so many connections that kept, aiding him in success. But the other one would always look and think about how he could do things differently. And from a book perspective, textbook perspective, in a lot of cases, he was probably right. But there came a time when, because of the abrasiveness of the one in charge, he ended up being escorted or pushed out of that position. And so the deputy, or the number two, all of a sudden found himself being elevated. And all those critiques that he made all of a sudden began to come through a bit differently. They began to come through in the sense of, now I'm in charge, so I can do all those things that I had thought about. So in his tenure in this new position of authority, he found himself having to make a lot of decisions. But now he's understanding the background of why his predecessor made some of those decisions. But yet he figured that he knew better, so he was going to make his own decisions. Unfortunately, he really didn't prepare as much as he thought he had. What he did was critique, but he didn't set himself up for when he took over. So things that would happen was he didn't make all of the connections that he needed to. He didn't make all of the types of arrangements in advance that he needed to do. He didn't value the interactions and getting people's opinions as much as he needed to. He didn't understand the various aspects of the business area that he thought it was only superficial. But what he didn't get was the people in all the diverse areas, and I don't mean just in ethnicity, I mean in an actual function. They really looked for folks that understood what they did, so they could feel like, oh, he understands us. Well, he didn't do that, so these folks were not quick to help him with his agenda. Well, unfortunately, his tenure in that new role didn't last that long. It was a little over a year. And then after that, he also was escorted out of that position, if you will. So what does that mean to us when we talk about this whole concept of you can do it better, right? What we're really talking about is this. Before we are so certain of the things we should and shouldn't do, or the person in charge should and shouldn't do, we really need to get a grasp of, well, what is their scope of involvement? What is it that influences them to come to these decisions? Are they making those decisions out of their just momentarily thought about this is the right way to go, or are they being influenced by others that you can't see? Sometimes coaches make a decision based off of data, but sometimes they make a decision based off of other influences, whether it be the owner, whether it be the general manager, or some others that influence how they are coaching and who they put in. But you can't always see that when you're just watching it. And so we have to think about that as more of, well, what's involved in it. I want to bring this down to a real nugget for you that will help you specifically. So yes, we can always look and critique folks, and we can give our opinions because they're always asking for opinions online. But I want to prepare you for the possibility of when you begin to move into the next level of authority or the next level of leadership. You see, there's this great aspect, or this great verse, I'm going to say, from Proverbs that was written. And it says, a man's gift makes room for him and brings him before great men. That's in Proverbs 18:16. A man's gift makes room for him and brings him before great men. When you think about this and what's being said here, a lot of it deals with being able to give gifts, make appeasement, make yourself known. But there's another aspect of this that we need to understand, and this is important for all of us. You see, we have to understand that no matter what we're doing, that we have giftings or abilities or skills that we can use. And oftentimes there's so many people that have ideas, but they never put them to use, or they never use those skills or giftings. What I'm telling you is this: no matter where you are, if you are in a position that you're in the midst of countless volunteers, or you're just a general employee at a GS2 level, or whatever it is, I would encourage you to just understand what it is your position description is, and then begin to use all the gifts that you have for that role. Why am I telling you that? Well, just doing just enough isn't really the right answer, because you don't grow that way. But what you need to be able to do is look at yourself and see what other gifts that I have that I can add to this position for this organization, so that while I'm here, I'm giving my all to it. And what that means and what that does for you is this: your giftings, your skills will eventually be noticed by others. And it will make room for you at the next level. It will provide opportunities for you, because someone will see it and remember it, and then realize, your skills will work even better at this other position. That's how doors are open. But if you never utilize those skills, if you never utilize those gifts, then people never see it, and they just look at you as part of the big army of people that are just working or volunteering in that organization. Years ago, in one company in which I worked, it was a consulting company, and I had my office, and outside of my office was a cube where my administrative assistant sat. And she began to realize something about me, which is true. And I think to some degree I still do this. At that time, whenever I knew that there was a new position, or a new opening at another level, or just a new opportunity, I had this habit that I would I would go out of my office, kind of in the hallway slightly, but kind of at the door. And in all the areas where there are a lot of cubes and all, I would kind of stand there and just kind of glance for a while at all the different parts of the floor. Now, I wasn't moving anywhere. She could see me, but she would be the only one that would see me. But I'm standing there just looking, almost as if I can see through the cubicle walls. And it would probably be kind of a strange thing for many folks, but I was doing something at that point, and I explained it to her also. What I was doing was, I was looking and remembering at that point everybody that was on my team, and I had a number of teams that were there on the floor, and they all had different functions. I had gotten to know them all. And so I would sit there and remember, or stand there actually, and look and see everyone's that was there, think about every conversation that we had had. What were some of their desires? What kind of growth pattern did they communicate to me? Because we would have those discussions. What have I seen from them lately? Have I seen them exercising some of their giftings? And I would think about all of those things. And then I would think about, well, what positions do they currently hold? And how could I help them as well as help the organization? How could I help them all grow? And how would I be able to benefit them? Because I believe that if a person is feeling fulfilled, they would continue on and put more focus in what it is they're doing. So I would stand there and do this and scan the whole floor. And she would say at times, my administrative assistant, "Oh, you're scanning again." Okay. And so that's what I would do. But those gifts that I would see, that I would witness, that I would hear about, that I would see based on what's being produced, were making room for a number of folks. There were some people that I knew had the abilities, but they just did not want to put the effort in. And for the next level, I needed someone that would put the effort in. So sometimes I would speak to them about it, but usually I would have to pass because their gift wasn't making room for them. But there were other ones that would go and do everything they needed to do. And then they would, in addition, show some other skills and the ability to grow. So that showed me that the capacity to grow, the capacity to do more was in them, and so that we could give them another opportunity to succeed. We have to remember that in our life. We have to remember that when we're working. Regardless of whether we have a rough day that morning on our way to work, regardless of whether we're just so tired of being cooped up, but we still have work to do, we have to make sure that we show that we do have giftings and the ability to move forward, to move into a different position, but yet do our current one very well. Because that's what speaks productivity, enthusiasm for the work, the ability to learn more and to grow more. I'm going to give you a couple other things to think about when we think about this topic. First of all, when I told you the example of the executive who was in waiting and then he eventually got promoted, well, if we put ourselves in his place, some of the things that we probably should have done was, one, make sure we listen very well. Listen to what the person that's in position now is doing. Listen to what they're saying. Help us to understand, that would help us understand what's going on more so. Listening to people's reaction to the interactions and listen to what's being said and what's being done and the critiques there. Not necessarily giving our own critique, but understanding, well, what's happening. Secondly, no matter what position you're in, you still need the ability to interact with others and to be able to make some type of connections. And so we need to have the ability, even while we're not in that position of authority, but we need to make our name known, not for the sake of, hey, I've got all the answers. That's not what I mean. But understanding, what is it that these people need? What is it that would help their lives be better? And if we could figure that out, then that bodes well for us, because when we get to a point of leadership, then we already know their needs and we can address those. The third thing you think about is, well, let's look at the organization itself. In our minds, what if we were in control? Do we understand the best way to organize? Do we understand the best way to get everyone working efficiently? Is that something that we could do? And so you begin to imagine yourself in a position other than where you are at this time. When you do that, then you're able to see farther. And when you begin to look at the advancement that you potentially will have at some point in time, you're able to realize that, okay, I understand the things that I can do and the things that I probably shouldn't do because they were pitfalls for the folks in front of me. You learn from those examples. Learn as much from others people's mistakes as you can, so that lessens theoretically the number of mistakes that you make. And so that's what's very important. So hopefully this has been helpful to you. Maybe this has been a point of inspiration in whatever it is that you do on a daily basis. It might inspire you to really change how you interact with people around you. Again, it is not about whether you like them or don't, whether they're your best friend or not. You're working together or you're interacting, so you have to be able to find a place or a level in which you can work. But if you let your gifts come forward, your abilities be seen, then your gifts are making room for you. Think about that for a minute. Think about what's going on there. And even when you watch the next football game on the NFL and a coach makes a decision that you don't understand, could it possibly be that he was told he has to put that player in? Could it possibly be that the information that he's getting is not accurate, and therefore maybe there's an organizational issue or change that needs to be done? It gives you a different level of thinking. But until next time, I want you to just think about what we've said. If this is helpful to you, I just want you to tell others. And if you have not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe to this particular podcast, Make It Plain. Thanks again, and we hope to talk to you on our next episode.